Stephen Hoover, and I'm a licensed attorney in the state of Louisiana. And why are we here? We're here to make money. We're here to sell something, right? We want to sell these scripts and pay off student debts, although hopefully Joe Biden will come through for us on that. I didn't want to tell everybody I had a problem this morning with Final Draft 12, so make sure you've got like the auto backup set up because it's not the most stable program, even though it's the 12th version of it. But my lecture today is going to be on option agreements. So you go through Inktip, you're dealing with querying producers about your project. They're going to come back. Chances are you're not going to be dealing with Warner Brothers or one of the biggies. You're going to be kind of dealing with possibly lower level producers, depending on your project, depending on where you are in your career. And this is how to navigate dealing with producers. I'm licensed in Louisiana. I'm not licensed in California, whatever state you're going to negotiate your deal. So I have to get that out. But I'm going to go over just some of the basics that you're going to face, like legal issues that are going to come up. So when you're first approached by a producer, what they may want to do is do some type of option or shopping agreement. Now let's go over what a shopping agreement is. So you've got your IP, you own the legal title to your screenplay, teleplay. In order for a producer to have some type of document that they can go out and present that to Netflix or Amazon, because you're usually going to be going through a player they already know, they're not going to talk directly to you. That producer is going to want some type of document or agreement in writing. A shopping agreement is typically should be non-exclusive, which means you're retaining the rights. They have a right to go shop it, but you're still retaining the rights to it, and you can work with other people if you may happen to make another contact. Oh, I got this producer over here. They're offering me option money. So that's a little bit of a risk from the producer's point of view, but you have to be careful on the wording of a shopping agreement, because if it says exclusive or there's some way you can't deal with other parties, then what you've done is basically signed an option called a shopping agreement that you didn't get any money for. It should specify the term. Any agreement you do, either the shopping agreement or the option, you want to say, 90 days, 6 months with a 6-month option. Some producers will want a 1-year option, with another year renewable. We're going to talk about that when we get into the terms of the option. And then it should either the shopping agreement or the option agreement, you need to have language that once this is expired, all rights granted herein revert back to you, the writer creator. The danger situation you don't want to be in is if you do revisions based on notes or you make changes to your script. They can say, oh, wait a second, you started out over here and now you're over here. So I've got some type of right or claim. And then now you've got kind of a producer out there that can threaten a lawsuit and create a headache for the next person that may come in. Because let's say you have it under option for a year. Oh, I did this 3 more rewrites, or I got some notes for coverage and I did some rewrites. You want to make sure it comes back to you, all the rights, unencumbered. Old producer, go the heck away. Because I have seen people do rewrites based on notes or coverage, and the producer's like, yeah, but that thing with that, now that's mine. So now you got a perpetual option, a headache of a potential loss that you've created for the person, the new producer that might be able to get something done. Be careful that the option disguises a shopping agreement. That's what I mentioned. If you have language in it where it's exclusive, then it's really an option. Okay, now let's talk about an option. The option agreements you're probably going to be approached to from a new producer getting started. Like I said, there's sites like Inktip. There's other sites out there, sellingyourscreenplay.com, where you can actually get direct contact with some of these young and hungry producers. And any of the producers, even the one with money, you want to pay as little as possible to tie up your script. Some will offer a $1 option, a no dollar option. The reason they do the $1 is because in some states the law says they have to have consideration, which is something of value. So some just do a straight up no dollar option. And you have to make a decision, should I do this? And you're tying up something of value that you put money into. I know certain writer friends of mine say, no, they got to put at least a couple thousand up. So I know they got some skin in the game. They're going to make some effort. People get something for nothing. They're not valuing it. Other people say, yeah, well, You know, he's got, if they have some type of a track record, they may say, let them make a run at it, and it's only like 90 days. What the heck? Maybe they got one person idea they're going to bring it to. So, you know, it's up to you to decide when you're faced with that situation. If you've got something kind of new and hot and you think there might be other people, but if it's something that's kind of been sitting on the shelf and somebody says, hey, give me, you know, 90 days or 6 months, try to put something together, and they have a track record, maybe it's worth taking that shot. Again, it should specify the term, either 90 days, 6 months, a year. I've seen, you know, 6 months, and then you can start specifying to renew this option X number of dollars. Like, okay, I'll give you 90 days, but then if you still want it after that, you're going to have to pay X amount of dollars. So don't tie it up forever, though. Obviously, the longer time period you've tied it up, maybe that producer isn't getting it done, isn't moving it forward, and you need to be moving on to talk to another producer. Be sure that you include address for notice on their side and your side. That should be in any contract. And then, again, concern about that, all rights reverting, that you have language that everything's going to come back to you. So the extension of the option, that's sometimes they'll ask for 6 months, and then they'll want additional time period for an additional pay to get more time in case they're making progress. I've got a buddy just got $5,000 because they re-up the option another 12 months, you know, and he's got 15 scripts. He's out there shopping and selling. So it's like, I got 4 of them under option, you know, that's 20 grand I made this year. Even if none of them get made, if one gets made, you know, it's $100,000. We're going to talk about script prices later, but you know, you can make some decent money as long as you're making people pay for your script. The price of the script, on that, sometimes it'll be, I've seen 2% of a budget, 2.5% of a budget, and then there's usually a floor and a ceiling. So the minimum price of the script is X, the maximum will be this. So if it goes up to 20 million, you know, unfortunately it doesn't keep going up, the script price, although it's all what you negotiate or your attorney will negotiate. One point there is to be careful of budget, because I've seen producers try to say, well, this is the after tax credit budget, or it's the below the line budget, or, you know, it's like you have to, you know, the language about something attorney's going to have to negotiate, defining the budget. It's good to go by that top sheet that they've submitted to the state tax credits and pre-tax credit too, because tax credits can lower the budget by 30–40%. Denise, did you have a quick question?
So you would say in the writing, you want to say before tax credit, percentage of before tax credit budget.
Yeah, that's a very specific negotiation point, but yeah, you would want it to be before. Obviously, the bigger the budget, the bigger more money you're going to get. So you want everything in there. But there are some minimums if you're in the Writers Guild, kind of a different set of rules. If you're outside the Writers Guild, it's whatever they negotiate with you. A friend of mine, I think he sold a script for $25,000. But that producer just brought it to someone else and then sold it for $50,000. So he got 25. The other producer got 20. So it's kind of, when you're not in the Writers Guild, you're kind of out there. The writing credit, that is something, you know, a lot of this, when you're getting started, you want to worry about your writer credit. The Writers Guild, again, has a process to negotiate that and even arbitrate that. But you want to put in there, you know, written by your name, and then you don't want to have it where other people can come on unless they've written over 50% of the script, because they'll director, everybody wants to put their name on the script, producer, director, that happened to me. Yeah, you want to say they have to write over 50% of the script, or, you know, Writers Guild is a minimum basic agreement that will cover all that. But writing credit is a big deal, so be careful that you negotiated for that. And how you want to be credited. Sequels, prequels, and remakes. Again, the Writers Guild has the minimum basic agreement has, you know, you get 50% if they do a sequel, prequel, or remake, even if you don't write a word of it. For independent people outside the Writers Guild, you got to negotiate it and make sure that's in there. Ancillary rights, a book or stage, like something like Joe's project. Hey, that could be a stage play. he would want to retain those rights. I have a project where I retain the stage rights because, like, hey, this could be a musical. So that is something to, again, to get in the contract. And some people overlook it. And it's one of those things that while you're negotiating, they may say, yeah, sure, we don't care about that. And then later on, you know, it could be something of great value. For the Writers Guild of America, minimum basic agreement, there's a requirement that the option price is 5% sales price. So I believe the minimum is about 60,000. So you're looking at 5% of that is your option price that you're going to get for the Writers Guild deal. Or if, you know, you sell it for 100, they got to pay 5,000 for the option. The first option is usually against sales price. So if it's $100,000 script, that 5,000 is applied to the sales price. The second one, oh, we need another 6 months or we need another 12 months. That's just, they have to pay that. Now that's money they're paying out of their pocket to tie up the material longer. And then again, the Writers Guild has set minimums. I did want to mention something. I just was able to join the Writers Guild. One of my projects is signatory, and the East Coast is a lot, off the record, is a lot easier to join than the West Coast. The West Coast Writers Guild is like a point system where you need 24 points. The East Coast, you get a credit with a project that's signatory, and they're kind of like, yeah, come on in. And it's also 2,500 on the West Coast. It's only 1,500 on the East. So you may want to keep, you know, mama's address, you know, so that you can use. Yes, Denise?
This might be elementary, but so do you have to have something sold to join the Writers Guild?
You have to have something optioned with a production company on a project that's signatory, and there's the producer becomes signatory, his production company, and then the project becomes signatory with the Writers Guild. It's something they fill out and they do. And what they're agreeing to is paying the minimum, that minimum basic agreement price. And when they have at the minimum, and then also they have to pay in like an extra 10% to pension and health insurance and things like that that you can get through the Writers Guild. Annual, it's like, I believe about 58,000 a year. It's like the price of one produced hour of television is enough to keep you an active guild member for that next year and qualify you for the pension. And yeah, you have to keep, yeah, you keep doing it, but some people will move inactive, and unfortunately 90% of the guild isn't active any given year. You know, there's a lot of people that sell one thing and then they're struggling to hang in there. Back end pay, deferred pay. This is one thing you may have a producer say, oh, well, we'll give you, you know, you'll get 5 net points or back end points, or we'll pay you later. Yeah, no, yeah. Eddie Murphy famously referred to those as monkey points, because basically the films are never going to make money. They're always going to show a loss. Forrest Gump cost $55 million. It made $683 at the box office, and there were no profits according to the, you know, the Hollywood accounting they do. So you want to make sure you're getting paid. If you do have some kind of profit participation, if you have the leverage and the power, everybody wants gross points, because then it's, you know, it's like the gross of the amount that it retains. And then also there's something you can negotiate called most favored nation status, where your profits are defined as the, what, you know, the most favorable interpretation as any other profit player, producer, actor is going to receive. So that's called something, again, your attorney would be negotiating for. WGA East versus West. Like I said, the West is more difficult to get into because it has that 24 points that you have to receive, and then it costs more. Another option, if you do something in Canada, you can get into the Writers Guild America, because it's like a reciprocal recognition of it. The benefits are, you know, they pay that extra 10% that goes toward the retirement pension and health insurance. And if there is a dispute, rather than having to do it through any kind of legal thing, there's actually a WGA arbitration about credit. So if someone were to have a dispute about the credit, this director's trying to put their name on my script, before the film is released, they send a notice to the players saying this is how it's going to be credited, and then you have an opportunity to object. If you object, it goes to a binding arbitration panel of 3 screenwriters. So there's going to be 3 people who are in the WGA that'll look at the different drafts, and typically writers are going to side with the writers, and then once that decision is made, it's done. So there were several people, I can't give the details, but there were some big arguments about Is it a reboot? Is it a reimagining? Is it a whatever? Who deserves created by credit? Well, that's a big credit because that's X amount of the budget that you're going to be getting per episode that you go to the Writers Guild, and then you got that protection. The horror story, just one that I know, a friend of mine wrote a novel, then he wrote a screenplay based on that. After working on it for 2 years, the director shows up, who's hired, 6 weeks before production, rewrites a couple of scenes, messes up some of his connective tissue, screws up the ending, and then sticks his name on as co-writer. So, with the director's name first. So yeah, you want to credit, that's back to the credits, but you also, had that been a Writers Guild, he could have gone to the Writers Guild and said, yeah, this guy doesn't deserve any kind of screen credit. And they would have said no. And the Writers Guild will severely side with on the writer's side over the director, because there was even one Oscar winner, Paul Schrader, did a total rewrite on a script that someone I know produced. And they were like, no, you directed it. That's your credit. He's getting the writer credit, even though it's Oscar. Hey, wait a second. I rewrote it. It's like, well, we don't care. So they said it's the same structure. So unfortunately, what that arbitration and the whole issue of credit creates, a lot of these big films, they'll be like, oh, there were 10 writers on that movie. And you're like, what the heck's going on there? Well, we brought in this person to write this, we brought in that person to write that. And ideally, you would be elevating the material. But what that system of credit creates, because they go back and look at every draft, you register with the Writers Guild, right? Well, that's the registered draft, or the draft that you have timestamped on your computer when you save it. Well, it creates an incentive for those new writers to go in and throw out as much stuff as they can, because they want to get the credit, because guess what? You get the credit, it triggers all these benefits and money and contract and things you can get. So unfortunately, there's kind of a perverse incentive, we would call it in economics, to change everything once you've taken control of it. And the Writers Guild checks, although I have yet to receive them, I heard it's like quarterly they come out, a little green check that you get. It's like, oh, nice, thank you. Then maybe they just wire it into your account now, but I hope to have that issue. Unforced errors. These are things that you can easily avoid and not spin your wheels. Do not write something based on something to which you do not own the underlying rights. Now, we saw that crazy success story with the Nurse Ratched, but just as likely, I have a friend who wrote a biopic of Jim Henson, and he's got the Muppets in his biopic, and he's trying to do this thing. Well, he gets a cease and desist letter when he's trying to go shop it to the people, because it's like, you don't own those characters, you don't own those life rights, stop. And they don't even want to see it, because it opens them up to a lawsuit if they see it and do something later similar to it. So, what did he spend 6 months writing that script for no reason? So you could write something, and so that's why you don't go write your Spider-Man script. Don't spend a year writing Spider-Man. You don't own the rights. Now you could write something similar but different, like the Die Hard sequel was actually started as a spec script that the guy just wrote about something else, and they said, hey, we could make this into a Die Hard movie. But he owned if they didn't, he still owned the rights to that. He still had something of value he could go shop. And then tread carefully. I think we talked about this also with the life rights when dealing with people still alive. The film American Made was shot and based on the life of Barry Seal, who was killed like a mile from where I used to live in Baton Rouge. He's a public figure. He was killed by these assassins, Colombians, if you saw the movie. But they didn't have the rights to his wife and his family. So, they had issues that they had to pay everybody after the fact. And that may be a reason for them to reject your script. So, I got a public figure here. Well, if you're doing, say, a crime thing, like OJ trial, well, they didn't have to get his rights because they got the transcripts, but they did have to tread carefully that they were doing things that were backed up by a court transcript. Because if they deviated too much, somebody could say, oh, you made that up, that never happened, I'm suing because it's making me look bad. And then also, we talked about public stories, public domain stories, life of the author. And sometimes you'll say, wow, why are there like Great Gatsby and whatever being made up? Because F. Scott Fitzgerald's been dead for 70 years. So now that's coming in. I think H.P. Lovecraft, they had several films come out about him because the time had passed. if you're doing a public domain story, you still have to tread carefully that you're not stepping on the toes of existing IP, like Ruby Slippers, for example, and Wizard of Oz were not in the book. They were silver slippers, and MGM kind of got out there, hey, this is going in public domain, but the way the Tin Man looked, the way the Cowardly Lion looked, the Ruby Slippers, here's all the stuff that's ours. So you still have to tread carefully, and if it's something that a studio is already known to have developed, another studio may not want to do that as well. What?
Is it kind of how like Loki, how Marvel kind of owns like the copyright or the trademark on like how he appears Marvel?
Right. So there's Loki, who's a Norse god. That's generic, but then there's his very specific representation in Marvel that they own, his version, or any of the mythology they created around him. Like the TV show Lucifer, obviously public domain character, their very specific interpretation is unique IP. So they've made it their own. Anyway, let's move on. Yeah, I got my little disclaimer. The entertainment attorneys will typically charge 5% of the deal. That's usually for people who have kind of a background in having things produced. A little bit more difficult with newer writers, newer people. A lot of times you can get a free initial consult, and the hourly rates can be $300 to $800 per hour for folks in LA that are doing this. I had a friend that optioned the script for $5,000. He said, I'm gonna get this hotshot, he's in the CAA building, he's super legit, he represents P. Diddy or something. So the entire $5,000 that he had gotten for his option went to the law firm, and then but he wanted to do that because he had written a novel and then written a screenplay, and he wanted to retain the novel rights. He felt like it was worth it. Then attorneys are paid 5%. Agents are regulated by the state of California. You can get a list of those that are guild signatory agents from the Writers Guild, or see it on their site now. And they charge typically 10%. Managers can charge up to 15%. They're not technically regulated by the state of California, so it's whatever deal you work out with them. And then a lot of the managers are now acting as producers, like Circle of Confusion, and certain managers are now, they like, hey, this is a good thing to get. Bender Spink was the first one that did it with the film Hangover. So they say, well, we're not going to charge you fees if we produce it. But some people have all three, some people have one, some people have none. So managers are generally the easiest ones to approach if you're looking for representation. And then on my website there, Wagstaff, I've got a few things about screenwriting and a few things about legal issues that may come up. One of them, which I'll go over quickly, was the Writers Guild registration versus a copyright. If you're dealing with the major studios, or you're a rep writer already, some people don't worry about it, but I do the US copyright for my scripts when I'm complete, just because the copyright gives you additional protection that the Writers Guild registration doesn't. It's for life. It gives you attorney fees if they infringe on it, and there's a $250,000 stipulated damage that you would get should it be infringed. WGA is good because it's cheap, and it is some indication of authorship, but usually it's like used for that arbitration purposes. Like, okay, we're going to go through draft after draft. Let me kind of plant my flag, showing what I would recommend. Like, oh, I optioned the script, or they're going to sold the script. They're going to bring in another writer or director. Let me go ahead and kind of plant my flag and say, this is where I got the script to. And then if other people come in, the arbitration panel will have something to go by to say, oh, okay, well, this one was dated here right when it first started. Let's take a look and see if this rewrite or polish or whatever did it. Because usually, if it's a writer director or somebody with writing chops, a director is going to go back in and do a little polish, and they don't get a credit for that. They have to do over 50% to put their name on the script. The other thing that can happen through the process is if they just love the idea, but they don't like the execution of the screenplay, they can bring in another screenwriter, and then you'd go down to like a story by credit. But I think we got time if there are any more questions or issues on options. I mean, this is the first thing that's going to happen to anybody is that they're going to come back at it. Hey, I like that. I love that. I want to option it. And you're going to be like, yeah. And I can tell you that of the options, actually getting paid from them and then moving forward, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's not great. You know, it's probably less than 10% because I've got 4 options right now. I don't know which of those are going to move forward, but you know, just because you get an option, don't go buy your new Audi, which a buddy of mine did. That's not going to be a good idea. But Denise, you had another question?
About copywriting. So let's say you have your script, and I've dabbled a little bit, and I'm copywriting some things. So you could do up to, I think, 4 or 5 scripts at one time, right? For the
Yeah, well, that's if it's a collective work. Like, so I mean, if you had totally distinct scripts, I would do it separate copyright. And there's an online registration that's like looked like it was built in the 1980s. Their website,
right,
but you can upgrade. Yeah.
But my question is, so let's say you submit your script, and then you make changes to your script. Is all of that null and void? You have to read
No.
the copyright on it once you've changed a few things, or?
No, I would say unless you make drastic changes or yeah, you don't have to keep recopywriting it every time or re-registering it every time. You know, you kind of planted your flag. Yeah, I mean, you've got your characters, your plot, your situation. Okay, boom, done it. So yeah, that's what I do. And I do send out stuff to get read pretty early on. So I go ahead and register and copyright it. And then it goes through some massive editing. But it's like, well, same character, same story. And then, you know, so you kind of planted your flag. Yeah, that's life of the author plus 70 years. And then whenever you sell it, there's a chain of title that they have to have showing that the IP was owned by you. You certify that you were the writer, you own all rights, and then you transfer it over to the purchaser as part of the sale. And when they go to distribute it, the distributors are going to say, where's your deliverables? And in that deliverables is going to be, here's your option, here's your sale, here's your, you know, chain, you know, showing the chain of title for the, you know, the script that it's based on. And one last thing I might mention is like co-writing. Sometimes people will team up. I recommend if you do team up, go ahead and get a co-writer agreement in writing. You can download them, and again, you know, you have your own attorney or whoever look it over. But the co-writing agreement protects you in case, you know, maybe in a car accident or whatever might happen to them. And then also if, you know, sometimes people don't get along, you know, life doesn't work out. I know somebody that had you know, had a producer and it was like, oh, we're a friend, we're working together. And then they had gotten the money to make the movie, and the person like, I don't like where you went with the script. I'll never sell that damn thing. So it's like, yeah, you want to get that co-writing agreement, and then you don't have to deal with heirs or whoever. And it's just kind of a good business to start getting things in writing. And then also if you're working with somebody, even if it's a small movie, go ahead and get an agreement like, oh, you want to go make my movie? Okay, well, let's draw up an agreement, the option. And then that way you can exit if, you know, something, if they're not able to do anything, because you don't want something tied up in perpetuity that you're doing work on. Denise.
Sorry, one more question. So
Yeah,
how
sure.
much do you charge if, let's say, somebody wants options in mind? I want you to look over this. Or do you?
Yeah, I mean, I can. I'm more in the, you know, that $250 an hour attorney is what I charge. But again, I'm licensed in Louisiana, so you know, I gotta be careful practicing law outside my jurisdiction. And then also, you know, one thing you want to look for in your contract. Sometimes those arbitration clauses are good because, you know, it's a way to a cheaper path of litigation. And, you know, that home state, you know, if they're letting you come, hey, well, send me an option. Well, put in there your home state, because I mean, why not have it on your home turf instead of California? Obviously, if it's a higher up the food chain, the more in control and the more organized they're going to be on their thing.
What do you think about, because these folks live everywhere, and there are entertainment attorneys everywhere. Is there a danger of going to just an ordinary lawyer?
Yeah, there is a danger because, you know, they know all these clauses, and it's like, oh, that's got the FU clause in it or something. And you'll see that, I mean, the real entertainment attorneys will have these red lines back and forth. There's arguing over this point and that point. So there is some risk, but I mean, sometimes you have to go with what you can get. I understand, you know, people can't burn that much money going over it. But there's more and more play. I mean, I know in Georgia, there's a lot of people doing entertainment law, putting films together. So if they've done film production, entertainment stuff before, they would be
It's basically
available.
contract law.
Yeah, it's contract law, but again, things like that, right? Rights reversion and things, there are clauses that are more specific to it, but.
Is there a good template online, one that you prefer?
Yeah, there's one I've kind of created. There's also I've created one that I use. There's a Done Deal Pro has some samples. The Writers Guild has the minimum basic agreement sample that is like, this is our standard. And it basically says, this is pursuant to the Writers Guild. We're going to follow those rules. And if you do one of those deals and the film moves forward, you would be in the guild. Also, a lot of these production companies, if they're going to deal with Netflix, like Netflix is signatory, so they're not going to let producers get around their rules by avoiding, the guilds. So, but yeah, there are forms out there. But again, like I said, some of these issues are going to come up, and attorney can look over it.
Comfortable sharing your template option agreement with the group?
Yeah, I mean, I'll put some little disclaimers on it or something, and I'll send it to you to post, and we can share with the group so you can kind of see what one looks like, and and go from there. But yeah, if something comes up, give me a call. You got my contact info there, I think, at the end. And just say, hey, how's it going, Hoover? I think I got some money. I think I'm gonna get some paper. Like, yeah, like not like buy me lunch, we'll go down. Yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways now. One of the good things out of this crisis, not a lot of good things, but the access that you have through Zoom, through Inktip, roadmap writers is another good one. Stage 32 is a bit predatory, but sometimes, you can definitely talk to some real players through Stage 32. There's ways you can directly communicate with producers, get them to look at your work, should you so desire. And then from there, everybody's chasing the heat. These the big agencies, they're kind of looking for people that already are making waves, and then they go find you. It's like, well, I got to go make waves on my own. Well, after the crisis, a lot of these folks are online and hearing pitches. I mean, you can go on Stage 32 or Roadmap Writers. A guy named Joey runs Roadmap Writers, and you can talk to all kind of producers. Crazy to contact. In fact, I'm doing some former head of CBS next month. I'm going to be doing a consult with for 4 scripts. So it's, there are ways to navigate your way around without a manager or agent until you get one. I mean, ultimately, that's where you want to be. And the managers also will give you more notes on your script, help you develop, say, go write this, don't write that, or this is hot right now, consider go writing that. So the manager is more kind of a career coach, pal, and the agent is like the suit, shark that's there, close the deal, get as much as they can. And, but the agents are harder to get. So I do have friends that have agents that have been able to get a manager. So, I have managers that haven't been able to get an agent. So the agent the manager goes out and tries to help find them an agent. So it's, but the main thing is for us, keep writing, stay positive, create a body of work, get your material better and better, and then things will happen, doors will open, people will find you, and then you're going to be back to this, oh shit, dollar option, man, that sucks, dollar, what the hell? Can't even go to Mickey D's for that money. Any more questions? Okay.
When basically we play a lot there's this category of books about the president.
Right.
I think that kind of
Yeah. Well, it's definitely public domain. We're in a public, can get more public figure than the President of the United States. That's public domain. Lincoln Vampire Hunter is not public domain. That took that public figure, created a unique IP around it. But vampires are public domain. Presidents are public domain. You could have you know, whoever, it's a John F. Kennedy vampire or whatever, I don't know, whatever you wanted to do. But yeah, those, if they did a unique story that was not in the public domain or part of history, you know, that's the question is, you know, what did he take? Like they have this, what's that book? Killing Lincoln or Killing Kennedy, you know, that series of books that guy did, whatever. Well, that's all public domain stuff. But if he had specific stories that he had created or dialogue he created or some unique person that could have been there, you know, that can become, like, that's how you make it your own. That's how you own it. Otherwise, the danger also is shopping something that somebody can say, oh, well, I'm going to do that because, you know, it's public domain still. So sometimes there'll be multiple things out there. If it's a public domain, you know, there'll be multiple competing projects. So yeah, I think you're okay though. If it's a United States president, I think you're going to be all right doing unique, your own work based on that. Any other questions? Okay, I think we're getting our early lunch.
So we'll see you all back at 2:00.
I don't know. I'm not a Zoomer. I can't figure it out.
Yeah. This is my niece. My two nieces, actually. That's.